I have a new favourite author, and I have read my favourite book of 2022 in April. This is my April wrap. Let's get talking about it. I've read 19 books, and 5 of them are 5-star reads. I am not unhappy about that ratio. That's awesome. I've also DNF'd 6 books. Something awesome is happening to my reading where this DNFing, I think, is giving me more 5 stars. Like a ridiculous number more. I don't know. This is something's cool's happening. I'm not sure. My brain is evolving like some sort of Pokemon thing. Don't put it in an egg thing. I've DNF'd some huge books. There's some really controversial DNFing going on this month. So let's start with the Shady Shit. Violet Kupersmith's Build Your House Around My Body. This is like a dual timeline thing about murder in Vietnam or something like that. It's got lots of magical realism. And it's one of these magical realism where, for whatever reason, they feel the need to talk about their fecal matter and anuses and all of this various stuff in an attempt to sound more literary than they actually are. I'm not there for it. I'm not there for pretentiousness. I just tell your story, discuss your themes, don't be a dickhead about it. Gabriela Garcia of Women and Salt. This book was alright, but it kind of felt like a cross between Yaa Gyasi's Homegoing, which is an excellent book, and David Mitchell's Cloud Atlas, which is not. I think if you want to paint a picture of the lives of women over generations, I'm quite there for that, but I don't really feel the need to have it jump around, and maybe there was a payoff for it at the end, but the jumping around was just confusing and it didn't add anything to it. Just tell it chronologically. It actually adds to know what a person's parents did and went through. It adds to their experience to see how they were brought about. The stories were kind of alright, but they didn't excel at anything. I just could not help but to compare this to Homegoing. It was never a favourable comparison to Homegoing. And in the end, I've seen this before. I've seen it done so much better. And I've DNF'd it. Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton was one of my picks for Aussie April. This tells the story about a young boy who is somehow caught up in some sort of organised drug crime. I don't understand the love for this book because this is not literary fiction, and I don't mean that in a sort of... I probably do mean that in a shady way. When somebody reads sci-fi and says it's not literary fiction, I'm like, no, it's sci-fi. And that's fine because you've got to look at what the book's intending to do. This is a book whose themes were so... It really did lack ambition. I could have read a boring-ass crime book with no intentions. It would have been snappier and it just would have been better. But it had literary intentions and it didn't fulfill them. I don't understand the love for this book. Not a good start to my Aussie April, that was. Coco Mellors, Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I was quite excited to read this one. I thought, I'll get one of the first reviews out on booktube. This book will be huge. There's already just that little bit of hype there. It's a good time to review this book. I'd have to finish it first. I just watched earlier today Booktube with Amy talk about a book where it was very male-gazy, but it was written by a woman. And I just couldn't help but to think of this novel. He started to write the alphabet on my clitoris. I don't have a problem with books being overtly sexual. I kind of like that when it's about sharing intimacy or vulnerability or pleasure or some sort of facet of the human emotion. I really felt like this sort of sexualization of the characters was performative. On top of that, Cleopatra is a blonde and Coco Mellors is a blonde, and natural blondes are not exactly common. Most blondes that we know dye their hair. It's just a fact. And when you see natural blondes in a book and you're of the similar age, I could not help but to think that this was an author insert character without knowing a lot about the author. And then for the sexualization to be very performative, I'm like, okay, so you want me to know you're hot? Look, you want me to know that you're good in the sack? I'm sure lots of people are hot and good in the sack, I'm sure some of our viewers are. It's just, some people are, and great, but I don't care. I'm not sleeping with you. What do I care? I'm sure that this book may have descended into something better. I actually thought that it was really going to go down a sort of a domestic violence path. So maybe if it gets a good review from some other people, I might pick it up, but I don't think I will. I think that this one might just be a real horror show. Remote Sympathy by Catherine Chidgey. This is the book on the Women's Prize long list about the Nazis. This follows the wife of a prominent Nazi who has developed cancer, and she is seeking treatment from this system which clearly doesn't work. And it follows a Jewish doctor that's treating her knowing that it's a scam, and it follows her husband who is a Nazi who is, I think that probably sums up his character pretty accurately. And it's quite a long book, and it wasn't bad. I just got a bit bored. I could have kept reading this one, it was fine, but I was just more excited about books that I hadn't started yet, and I'm like, I just put it down, I'll DNF it, and if the mood takes, if I see a couple of reviews that make me think, oh, I need to read that. The last one, the most shocking DNF of them all. I definitely am not opposed to trying this again at a different time. I'm definitely not opposed to going out and finding all the resources to center myself in this book so that I can read it and enjoy it. But Vikram Seth, A Suitable Boy. This is the longest book ever published in English that I'm aware of. Maybe that's no longer true. Maybe that's not right, but I'm pretty sure it's the longest book ever published. And there's a lot of characters. I'm not getting enough time with these characters before on to the next character. I'm finding it too hard to settle into who is who and to figure out how they relate to each other. It's just a little bit too complex. I like simple things building complexity. I don't like complex things building complexity. Simple things can build a lot of complexity. And maybe this is just the wrong time. I got a few things going on in the personal life that may be taking my mind off reading just a little bit. It's probably not the best time to read it. I don't object to picking it up later on, but I think what I would do is try and download like a family tree or a character map or something so I can learn how all the characters link up, because it's confusing. Now onto the books I read. Of the 19 books, I'm not going to review 2 of them because they're going to be coming in a video, one of the challenging my assumptions about genre fiction videos that I have been doing. A Leaf Shafak, The Island of Missing Trees. This one made it to the shortlist of the Women's Prize. It is about a daughter of 2 Cyprian refugees. It's in 2 timelines. One is the story of the daughter, one is the story of the parents. And part of this story is narrated by a fig tree, because why not? This was a real disappointment, I have to say. After the absolute masterclass of a book that is 10 minutes and 38 seconds in this world, I was expecting that again. That's what I wanted. That was an absolutely outstanding book. I wanted that again, and it fell some way short. It's not a bad book. Once an author is writing stuff like that, there comes an expectation that that is the quality that they're going to write at. This was a good book. This was fine, but it's not 10 minutes and 38 seconds good, that's for sure. The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. I'm just beginning to think that Louise Erdrich is for somebody who isn't me. I'm not feeling Louise Erdrich. This was fine. This is about a woman who works in a bookstore after getting out of prison for a while. There's a ghost in the bookstore. It does explore lots of themes around being Native American. And then it goes on to explore like all these super modern themes that already feel quite dated. Things like Black Lives Matter and COVID. Not that those are irrelevant things. They're still really relevant, but I felt like it was kind of going for an uber current feeling. And this stuff is now 12 to 24 months old, and it no longer quite feels... It no longer feels so current. I don't see the fascination and the love around this book. It's perfectly acceptable. I'm glad I read it, but I won't reread it. I wouldn't pick it up again. I just found it... I was lucky enough to be given an arc of Young Mungo 3 hours before it was released or something, in just not enough time to read a book, but I was able to finish it quite quickly. The follow-up to Shuggie Bain by, of course, Douglas Stewart. If you liked Shuggie Bain, you should read Young Mungo. I really can't see anybody not having the same opinion about these 2 books. They are different books. Stewart definitely has a point where they're very similar and then goes off in his own direction. But basically, if you want to know whether you should read this, did you like Shuggie? Have you read Shuggie yet? Some people will find this better than Shuggie. some people won't. I think probably objectively it's the better book, although I did prefer Shuggy Bane. But I think very similar quality. I've got a whole book review out for this if you didn't see that as well. And that was my first 5-star. My second 5-star was The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley Haller. This tells the story of a woman who is cheating on her husband, and it sort of goes back and it discusses all the things in her life before that, leading up to that. It tackles sexual abuse. It tackles this sort of... There's a dark connection between these two characters. And then it also goes on to discuss motherhood amongst its many themes. I thought that this was a bit of a trashy novel, but it is trashy in exactly the way I love. I was just engrossed and I was there for this novel. Was this a particularly good novel? No. Did I really enjoy this novel? Yes. Does it matter if it wasn't particularly good? Absolutely not. I feel like this is kind of like a cross between maybe something like The Secret History and Normal People. It's captivating and engrossing. It kept me interested into the end. It's got dark themes. It's got this problematic romance. It's got this long-standing love thing going on. It's got a lot. I quite enjoyed it. I don't think everybody will enjoy it. So know what sort of reader you are going into it. Matrix by Lauren Groff. This was a book that I read with Nell. We were audiobooking this in the car together and it took us quite some time to finish. This book has some very nice writing. This book is quite funny. There's not a lot else I can say about this book. I was kind of waiting for it to all come together. There was no real hook. I don't think I liked this one. I feel like Lauren Groff did all of the things to make me feel safe and satisfied that it was going to be a good book. And then I sort of started to get halfway through this book and I'm like, where's the tension? What's going on? This is a character portrait of this nun who is a bit of a kick-ass bitch, but I didn't get an arc going on. It really does feel like somebody's life. Your life isn't really a story. It's a collection of random events that occurred. There's often not a lot of connection between them. They're just things that happen that you can tell me stories about the things that happen to your life and it will paint a picture of the sort of person you are. Look, I love good characters, but I think I need just a hint of plot, and I just didn't get any from this, and so I just didn't like it. Outlick by Lulu, Allison. This is the cow dystopian on the Woman's Prize long list. This is the one that everybody was really excited, made it to the long list, and nobody read it. Cow dystopian, it probably tells you why everybody got excited, and then people sort of said, yeah, actually, I'm not that into it. This was a crowdfunded book, and it was published through crowdfunding. Maybe that shows a certain problem in the publishing industry where quality authors struggle to go through that publishing process, because Lulu Allison can write. This is a very complex book. It has a cool storyline. It has this typical dystopian thing where the world is super interesting. This needed a good editor. This should have been 150 pages and it was 350. But it was actually quite a good read still. I would, if you're interested in this book, go out there and read it. It's rough around the edges and it's going to make you think, and it's going to give you cool things to discuss and think about. You got to think about how the government controls you. You've got to think about how globalization affects rural communities. You've got to think about climate change. That's all cool. There's some great ideas in this. I love it. But it really did need somebody to say, that chorus of cows you've got, that doesn't add anything to it. And people are going to say it's a cow dystopian and then not buy your book. What you've got is a really interesting climate fiction dystopian novel that needs to be 150 pages less. And if that had have happened, this would have been a star read. I don't know whether Lulu Allison got rejected by publishing houses. If she did, that's a shame. And I know that the publishing world is notoriously fickle. I know that you've got to write the right book at the right time and all of that sort of stuff. And maybe she's just unlucky and maybe this is the only way she could have published. But it's a real shame that didn't happen. I hope that somebody picks her up and gives her a nice big fat check for her next book and gives her the support that she needs to turn a good book into a really good book. For Listeners by Jordan Tannahill. I saw this on Bob's channel, and do you remember back before YouTube and streaming services and Netflix and all of that, Do you remember watching TV late at night? This will reveal how old I am. With a remote, changing channels, wondering what's on. And then you get to see this conspiracy theory. You can see octopuses are controlling the US government in return for whale meat. What does this mean for your taxpayer money? What does that mean? And you know it's trash. You know it's trash, but you want to watch it. Just maybe it's credible journalism. Maybe it's not. You know it's not. But what if it was? And obviously you're disappointed. There used to be that sort of thing on all the time, that like tacky conspiracy theory that you just... Anyway, I'm getting off topic. This is a book about people who start to hear this like really low pitched noise and nobody else can hear the noise. They think the other people are nuts. And it is a metaphor for political extremism. You could substitute this noise for anti-vaxxers. You could also substitute this noise for climate activists. You could substitute it for almost any political position. Tannahill is really clever by picking something that is so apolitical. Being able to hear a noise, that's not conservative, that's not progressive, that's not authoritarian or libertarian. That's just a noise. It just sounds like it's going to be octopuses running the US government. It just sounds like it's going to be terrible. But it's quality journalism. It's really good. This is an excellent book. This is wonderful. I really like authors that are able to use a vague stand-in for issues. I always think it's interesting when you look at political issues and when you flip your values and you see how the other side is treated, how you want the other side treated. I think it points out the way we think about politics, the antagonism in it. There is a real dismissal of, well, let's use anti-vaxxers, for example. There's a real dismissal of the anti-vaxxer movement. And it's to the point where you would struggle to question the testing of a vaccine without being labelled an anti-vaxxer. I want to stay apolitical on the vaccine argument here. I don't want to pick sides and venture in. Look, vaccines work, and I'm not saying that they don't, and get yourself vaccinated. When we have an element of people who are just screaming anything, and an element of people who are like, no, actually, there is something here. These vaccines aren't being tested for human safety properly. Can we have a look at that? If that gets dismissed with the tinfoil hat people, it's a problem. How do you treat that? How do you listen to that without then getting caught up in all the bureaucracy and the rigmarole of the tinfoil hat people? How do you move on? How do you listen to other people's opinion and give them a validity of opinion when they're wrong or when you think they're wrong? And this discussion around this noise and this cult that comes up around hearing this noise is so apolitical. The whole time I was substituting different political scenarios into this world. I was substituting the Nazis' treatment of the Jews. I was substituting them being neo-Nazis. I was substituting climate activists. I was substituting anti-vaxxers. The different scenarios that Tannahill goes through, it's so well done and thought-provoking, and it really should have failed as a book, and it comes together so well, and I cannot recommend this book high enough. The Other Black Girl. This one's going around booktube a bit. I think we probably all heard about it. This is a bit of a weird book, I think. I'm not even sure what I read. I enjoyed it. It's not a bad book, but I don't want to give away spoilers, but the way it ended was not satisfying. I didn't like that. It was a little bit too weird for me. And I say that after just reviewing quite a weird book that worked for me. The plot led the themes. And the themes of this book are about the complexities of racism, how white people treat black people, and how black people treat black people. That's an interesting theme. There's lots of layers in that. That will make a good book if you do that well and execute that well. That's always going to be an interesting book. But this was led by a plot. And I don't know what to call this, but it was very, very much changed tones as this sort of plot unraveled. And I wasn't there for it, I'm sorry. Overall, it was a good book. I was never going to DNF it. I was interested until the end. I wanted to know how it finished. The writing was fine. The characters were actually pretty well made, but it's a sort of a 3-star average read. It's probably a little bit more of elements of 4 and 5 with elements of 2. We Jane by Amy Wall is a Canadian novel about a woman who leaves I want to say New York. That's not a very Canadian city, so maybe I'm getting confused. Yeah, I'm getting confused with a different book. Leaves a big city to go out to the country to act as sort of the Jane, who is some sort of doula, birth worker, doctor, wise woman person who helps with things like abortion. It's an interesting concept for a book. It just doesn't quite work. I'm sorry. It's just not well executed enough. I wanted to like this because it had good characters, it questioned heterosexuality, it was talking about family planning and revolutionary women fighting back and giving women birthrights. All of this sort of stuff was not birthrights, control of their body. All of this was cool ideas and cool themes that just didn't sew together into a fabric. The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nghi. Nghi is one of Nell's favourite authors, and I read this as part of a secret project that we are doing together that you'll never know about because it's like 70 books long. And I didn't really expect to like this because I'm not a Nghi fan. This is a retelling of The Great Gatsby, and I'm not a Great Gatsby fan. It was retold in a fantasy world with dragon blood and paper magic, and that doesn't sound like a book I would like. But I was wrong. I really enjoyed this. This is the version of The Great Gatsby I would have liked to have read in school. Not that I studied The Great Gatsby in school. It's told from the point of view of Jordan Baker, who is in this world bisexual and Vietnamese and adopted. It goes through the events of The Great Gatsby while discussing this sort of weird world where you make paper versions of yourself that comes alive and you drink dragon blood instead of wine, and there's a Vietnamese community. This was fun. I almost felt like in the way that Gatsby criticizes the American dream and talks about the role of money and corruption, that this was sort of like pointing out how heteronormative America is and how silly that is. I really enjoyed, I feel like everybody in this book was pansexual, and there was a freedom of sex that really seems it really does seem in the spirit of The Great Gatsby, but it was just told in a sort of a fun, there's this romance, there's this magic, there's this guy who wants to get to Daisy and it's a bit weird and everybody's sleeping with everybody else and what's going on and who's being manipulated, and then obviously the car thing. I thought it was good. I really do recommend this as a bit of fun, especially if you are not opposed to a bit of fantasy. Abandonment by Cal Flynn. I saw this on Heather's channel, Soggy Expat Book Nerd. She read it for the BookTube prize. This is a book about how enclaves of human non-existence create these weird biospheres of animals, how things evolve with and without humans. It talks about the impact of soil and human farming on climate change. Why do we read a non-fiction book? Because as a book, this didn't have a narrative. This didn't really fit together. It wasn't going anywhere. It didn't make me want to read the next page. But what it did do was it just threw interesting fact after interesting fact after interesting fact at me. There is so much cool stuff in this book that there was no way I was ever going to DNF it. I loved this book. Was it well written? Absolutely not. Absolutely. There should have been a professional writer to take over. Like, I have no idea why Cal Flynn does the research that she does. Why? I don't know what you got into it. I don't know what you get out of it. I do know it's really fascinating and I want to know more about it. So as a book, it's not well done. But the reason I read nonfiction is to learn fascinating stuff. It's for those cool tidbits, and it's chock full with it. So it's an awesome book. There is an island in Scotland that has been abandoned by human people in the last, 50 years ago or something. And they had all these cows, and they let the cows out. Just as like it's nicer to the cows to leave them out and give them the island than it is to keep them in this little paddock that they can't escape from. And the cows then, had children and developed a cow society that is similar to how elephants live in Africa. When they see the bones of one of their dead cows, they have a little sort of ceremony. They mourn their dead. That's cool. The London Underground has evolved a special sort of mosquito that can no longer breed with the mosquitoes above ground and prefers human flesh to bird flesh, or human blood to bird blood rather. These are just like, there's so many interesting things. The effect of the Black Death on climate change and the mini ice age. There's so much stuff in here that you're like, is that, like, I need to find out more about that. I need to do some research and see all the things about this. This is interesting. I do recommend this book. I mean, I feel like my criticisms of it are just like not important. Eric by Terry Pratchett. This is quite a short Discworld novel. I think it's number 9 in the Discworld series. And it's the 4th Rincewind book. This boy summons a demon to do his bidding, and gets Rincewind, who is not a demon and is not magical enough to fulfill his desires, which are basically to kiss the most attractive woman that's ever lived. Then the head of the underworld sees this happening and decides that this is a perfect soul to take, so gives Rincewind the power to do these things, and Rincewind doesn't know how it's happening. The whole time Rincewind's luggage is following him about, and it's a real Terry Pratchett mess. If you've read a Discworld book, you know what they're like, and this is another one. I know that's a very cop-out review, but Terry Pratchett's consistent. This is probably one of his weaker ones, but to be honest, there's not a lot of difference between a bad Pratchett and a good Pratchett, is there? They're all funny. They all sort of critique the world. I loved how the demons were like, no, we don't torture people now. We're bureaucratic. It's much more efficient at torturing people. Hilarious. Let's talk about the worst book I read this month. It's Jhumpa Lahiri's Whereabouts. A book with staggeringly low ambitions that failed to meet them by a long shot. This book was so nothing that when it ended, I was like, huh? Are we still not setting the scene? Sorry, nothing's happened yet. Where is the rest of the book? What? How is Jhumpa Lahiri a respected author if, who publishes this? This is not. Who gives this a good review? Nothing happens. There's no characters. There's no setting. The writing's whatever. There's no structure. There's no theme. It's a diary. It's a diary that's not particularly interesting. Who liked this? If you did like this, what did you get out of it? Hannah Devotion. This one, I feel like this one's got a little bit of hype going about. This is not the sort of book that I would normally like, I have to say. It kind of gave me vibes of The Binding by Bridget Collins, who is a TERF, so we don't like to talk about her, but I can't think of another book off the top of my head, so I think most people have read that one. If you liked that book, this is much better. This follows Hannah, who is in love with her best friend, and they live in Prussia. It's decided that everybody will be emigrating to South Australia, and they go on board this boat. We sort of see this queer coming-of-age romance between these two women, and that's cool. And then something happens in the middle of this book, and what? I can't tell you what happened, but I was not expecting it, and I'm still not really sure how I felt about it. It completely changed the sort of book that it was. It still kept my focus. I was still captivated by it. This is a historical fiction that is quite well done. If you liked The Mercies by Kieran Millwood Hargrave, this is the sort of book that you should also read. That's probably a good way of saying it. I think I gave this one 4 stars. I'm going to talk about Honeybee by Craig Silvey. I posted a review of it. I titled it, I fucking loved this book, or something like that, because it was really good. I think it's time to make a confession about my star rating system. I think I might need to reanalyze it, because I have what I consider to be a 5-star book, and then it would be once a year I would read a book that was better than 5-star, and then it would happen twice a year or 3 times a year. And it's happening a little bit more and more, which is awesome. It means that I'm enjoying my reading more and I'm loving it. But this book is definitely more than a 5-star. It does make me wonder if maybe I need to make all those books I consider more than a 5-star, if they should be my 5 stars and my rest of my 5 stars should be 4 and I should push everything down a star. But that's not really important, is it? Just know that this is a wonderful book. We have a main character, Sam, who is 14. Sam is Googling, can a boy be born a girl? Sam is exploring their gender identity. Sam is almost certainly trans. Sam is committing suicide in our first scene, and we meet Vic. Vic is an older man who is a Vietnam vet, and he sort of accepts Sam for who Sam is and just cares about Sam because Sam was about to jump off a bridge and kill himself. And so was Vic. Vic's wife has passed away and Vic was committing suicide because Vic's dog had just died, and Vic didn't like the dog. The dog was his wife's dog, but he felt obligated to look after the dog until the dog died. And the dog died, and such is Vic's grief that he is going to kill himself. And upon meeting Sam, he sort of has that attachment to something in this world, and they form this really weird friendship. There's so much in this book. The like gender themes are central to this, but there's themes about the army and de-individualization and following orders. There's themes about robbing banks. There's sex as a transaction. There's friendship. There's lying. There's just, oh my god, there's so much in this. I just think that this is an absolutely wonderful book, and I absolutely loved it. Speaking of books that I think are better than 5 stars, I've got to say, I think I've got a new favourite author, because I've read 3 of her books now. I read A Tale for the Time Being, which follows on from The Book of Form and Emptiness and My Year of Meats. None of those books are similar to each other, but oh my god, Ruth Ozeki can write a story. She can write characters. She's stylistically different in all of these books, and I think every single one of them is in that better than 5-star class that I've just talked about. Writing novels was a competitive sport, then Ruth Ozeki needs to be urine tested for EPO. She's cheating. Nobody can write books this well, this consistently. This is just wonderful. The Tale of Her Time Being tells the story of it's just going to sound ridiculous, but just know that, like the listeners, it's well executed, and that's what makes it work. This young Japanese girl who identifies as American, and this is a theme in all of Ozeki's work that I've read so far, this sort of half Japanese, half American or Canadian person, not really knowing which culture they fit into. Anyway, this girl was raised in the US to Japanese parents, and when the parents moved back to Japan, so did she, and she didn't really speak the language overly well, and she gets a bit bullied in class, and this is her diary. And her diary is being read by a character who is a novelist called Ruth. It's probably not too hard a jump to see who this is meant to be. We get to see what's happening in Ruth's life. She is then trying to do research into this girl as she is reading her diary, and she's looking up her father and this and that, and she's really struggling to find information, but it's a really weird way of blending this. Ozeki is obsessed with this idea of presence and now, and there's this little scene where Niao is saying, once you say now, it's in the past. When is now? What if I say it quicker? Now. And when is now? And it travels into this world of the quantum multiverse in a weird sort of way, but it's all quite grounded in reality. It's weird. It probably shouldn't work, but it really did. And that's what I feel about quite a bit of Ozeki's work. It's very ambitious, and you just there's too much. It shouldn't work. It's a bit bombastic, and she pulls it off. I think that authors of literary fiction, of the most prestigious, toffee-nosed, pretentious literary fiction, have a choice of writing characters that ground you to their motivations and emotions and feeling and make you feel like the characters are alive, or these uber intellectual complex themes that you sort of have to almost like a book puzzle where this represents this, and what on earth was James Joyce talking about with Ulysses? But that sort of style of what do you mean, what are you actually saying sort of thing. I definitely prefer the first, but Ozeki is doing both. The thing is, she's doing the puzzle. I always feel like you need the right key to get those puzzles, but she provides you with the information to solve the puzzle, so it's all there and it all makes sense, and she spoon feeds you so you can figure things out when she wants you to figure them out, and that plays into the character creation that makes her this is not an either or. This is, well, I'm going to use one to make the other one better, and then vice versa. That is an extraordinary skill. I'm sure that there are other authors who can do that, but I've not seen somebody do it as well. And I have to say, she's overtaken Thomas Hardy. She's overtaken Akwaeke Emezi. She's a good book writer. I think she has to be my favourite. Oh my god, I forgot a book. Too many books. I'm glad I remembered before I stopped filming. Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. This tells the story of a woman who goes to like a marine trip in a submarine, comes back and she's a bit wrong, and her wife is looking after her, and we see most of it from the point of view of the wife, although we do see some from the other wife's point of view. Miri is our non-marine biologist wife, and Leah is our marine biologist. Starts off with little things like Leah is bleeding from the gums, and then she's like constantly running water, and it just gets weirder and weirder. And I want to say, I think I've used this metaphor a bit, but like octopus controlling the US government sort of conspiracy theory. And this one, I'm not sure whether the octopuses are controlling the US government or if we've got some quality journalism going on or what. But it's sort of really right on that line. I liked how this experience of Leah was like a metaphor for growth, and how that changes a relationship, and how people can be well suited to each other and then not well suited to each other, and how people live together. But I'm not really sure it quite worked. I actually really did enjoy this book. I was captivated by what was going on. I was interested until the end. I wanted to know how it finished. I thought the writing was great. I just think that the themes and the ideas and how that fits in with the plot was not... I could have used just a little bit more spoon feeding and a little less weird shit. I didn't mean to use octopuses controlling the US government and then talk about this book, but that's actually really kind of on point. I wanted to finish off with a little something. I don't do TBRs, and I don't really see a lot of value in TBRs as a video. I do watch a lot of your TBRs, so maybe that's a wrong choice, but I just don't think that they're particularly good videos for me to make. That said, I'm kind of a little bit jealous because every now and then I see people and they talk about these little small group buddy reads they have. I want to like nominate 1 or 2 books at the end of each wrap to say, I want to read these books next month. Who wants to read them together with me? So the 2 books I'm going to nominate next month are Strange Weather in Tokyo by Hiromi Kawakami and Khaled Hassani's And the Mountain Echo. And the Mountain's Echo, I don't mind if I don't get a single person take me up on this or not, but what I will say is in the show notes there is my Voxer. You can just message me on Voxer or let me know what your Voxer is in the comments section. And if you're interested in reading those books, Strange Weather in Tokyo is quite a short book, so maybe we'll do that over 2 weeks. And The Mountain Echo is a bit longer, so we'll do that over 3, because we'd like to get it finished by the end of the month. Both of them would fit in with Asian Readathon if that's what you're reading, and if not, I think that they both sound like they're pretty solid, good books. Hopefully we can get like a small group of 4 or 5 people to read these books, and I just want to like pick a book at the end of each wrap and say, who wants to buddy read this, and have it like be really low stress. Like, I don't care if you guys don't want to read the book, I just want somebody to. There's just so many awesome people out there on booktube that I have not quite connected to as good as I would like to connect to, and I think that this is a cool way of just getting to chat to some people outside of a video and nice video sort of comment section, you know? I don't want to make this a big readathon, I just want to have it to be informal. That's the end of the video. I'm going to link in the end screen the Young Mungo and Honeybee book reviews, so if you've not seen them, you can just click on the end screen and make sure you subscribe.